أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما.
It's actually level, not minimum.
They do it together.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for having us here. A special thanks to this beautiful masjid, which I consider my masjid, my local masjid too, because whenever I come, I stay at my aunt's house, and this is my local masjid. And I also want to thank Sheikh Mustafa Omar for organizing this. This is our first time showing this. The brothers and sisters that have been working on this program have been working for about 9 months on it, so it's almost like the birth of this project. This is a non-for-profit organization, and the main aim was to capture episodes of the Seerah, particularly lesser emphasized episodes, base it on the most recent research that's been conducted, and I'll just say one or two things about that. And then to present it in a way that's more interactive and engaging, using today's tools and technology so we can get closer, even though we're getting more distant from the center, get closer to it. If I could summarize this project in one verse of the Quran, it would have had to be the verse that was recited. That was all about the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, how they started off like a plant being planted, yet they grew to be such amazing plants that the ones who planted them were amazed, and they produced such beautiful trees and fruits for humanity. Before I show the trailers, I just want to mention that there's a big research effort project that's going on in Seerah in the last 10 years that I have had the privilege of being connected with. And that Seerah project started out with saying that the life of the Prophet ﷺ spread over 23 years should equal to about 8,000 days. Of those 8,000 days, the amount of knowledge that's covered in our current Seerah books of the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, we only have some 50 days or what, give and take. So, and a lot of the times our history is very vast, and you know, I'm more encouraged speaking in front of Sheikh Mustafa Omar, because if I make mistakes, he can correct me. But normally, when the water is present, you don't make tayammum. Our history is so vast that we've had different genres. We have a genre of history in Islamic studies, in hadith, and in fiqh, and in tafsir, even dictionaries. Normally, our seerah works has always been based on former seerah works. And so that somehow led to a bit of a limited take of the seerah. So this project embarked on a journey saying, let's collect all the books authored in Islam in the first 5 centuries in Arabic, including seerah, tabaqat, history, hadith and its commentaries, the madhahib and its commentaries, And so they said, let's see what we can gain. Any new biographical data. Sometimes it might not be something very important. It might not have been about the life of the Prophet ﷺ, but it might be something small about a companion and a specific event. That might not make it in the Sirah books, but when you add and collect all these little pieces of data, it can form a much more clearer image that helps us to understand the Sirah and add more light to the context. And so they started and they realized they're collecting a lot of information just from fiqh books. They were surprised that so many fiqh books, given the nasikh and mansukh, can produce so much. So they expanded it. Within the last 10 years, they were able to have human researchers, mainly graduates from Azhar and a few scholars from Turkey, go over 4,000 volumes of text written in Arabic. When I say that, most people get surprised, do we even have those many texts? We have way more. But they were able to go through 4,000 volumes, which are equal to about 2,000 texts. And that data has been gathered together and it's put into a search engine. And inshallah, there's a plan to have a conference for that. And I've had the privilege of speaking about that data and that research with Sheikh Mustafa as well. While that's happening, for the last 9 months, a group of brothers and sisters, many university students, some working with film and cinema and a background in that, said, can we produce something using AI in the 3D world? And so they spoke to one of the researchers. They said, look, we can give you some of this data. And they started, and the clips I'm going to show you is what has come up in the last 9 months. The idea is one video we'll see is just, they're going to be episodes where we can see actual, for example, currently they've worked on an episode on Hilf al-Fudul, a particular incident in the life of the Prophet before his prophethood, where there was a treaty made to protect those whom injustice has been done against, to protect them. So that episode, it's a Meccan phase episode, they're making an episode of that. So we'll watch a trailer on that. And then there's also an attempt being made to create a game, an interactive game. And you'll see a trailer of that. And then one small trailer about how this process happened, how the characters were formed and the faces were formed. And then once we show that, we invite, as Ustaz Ahmad said, there'll be a system of people going watching and we'll start our panel. So this is the trailers that I'll just open up. And inshallah, we'll definitely take Q&A as we go through it as well. Oh yeah, I just want to mention, thanks to Ustaz Ahmed. I came here to America before Ramadan in Dallas, and I had a chance to showing this to some of the most leading Muslim scholars from the Dallas community, but around some online. And we've collected their information, and this is still a working in progress. So I'm actually keen to hear Sheikh Mustafa's views on this as well, both in private, but also in public, but also in private. What we think of this from an angle of Islamic permissibility. Should we show the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ? And we heard a variety of different views. Overall, by far, most of the scholars' feedback were very positive, but some did say, look, let's not do this and let's do this. And we've tried to incorporate a lot of that feedback, and we're still constantly consulting scholars. And we were recently at the ISNA convention, and we had a breakfast program just for scholars, and we really want their du'as, but also their feedback about this. So inshallah, we want to show you this to you. You'll have a chance to look at it outside. We look forward to all of your feedbacks and du'as as well. So maybe we can show it now. Jazakumullah.
Let's embark on an imaginative journey to the Arabian Peninsula during the Age of Happiness, where the sands hold secrets of a young man destined to change the world.
وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ.
For the first time, experience the early years of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. Witness the pride of humanity in action, a person of captivating moral beauty and striking presence. He holds a book so miraculous that it cannot be imitated, speaking truths that resonate deeply with human experience, life, and the broader universe. His words transcend time, reaching not just humans, but also jinn, angels, and all living beings, unraveling the mysteries of the universe with unparalleled depth. Discover the light that emerged from unseen days. Invisible days, a journey into the untold stories of the life of God's messenger. This short animation series, Invisible Days, is coming soon.
Okay, so that was just a trailer about the episodes. Now we'll just have a trailer about the game. So okay, we can play the trailer. Shukran.
Is it blind friendly?
I have to double check into that.
And do these episodes have audio description?
I have to double check on that too. Two very good questions. And just one last video. This one was just about the process of how the characters were chosen. And okay, brothers and sisters. They were just the videos. Maybe we can have a more open discussion, and I think the system of brothers and sisters taking turns and watching the videos outside has started. Maybe now we can begin with our panel discussion. Can we maybe have Sheikh Mustafa here?
تفضل.
We said we're trying to make sure it's as organized as we can so that we get up to speed with like Everstar and the great things they've been doing, mashallah. So most of you by now have numbers in your hands. I think so.
I don't.
If you don't have a number, you're going to get the number, inshallah, because there are people still walking around and distributing numbers, and I'm going to continue through the night to distribute the numbers, inshallah. So that number, just as we explained to you, there will be 4 stations outside to my left in the patio. 4 stations, basically 4 chairs. But each chair has the meta numbers. So you can actually experience what you have just heard and saw real time. So you can actually experience it. I haven't tried it myself, so I cannot exactly tell you what you see, but I heard it's great stuff. So we're going to also keep it so we can run 2 parallel sessions. One, we ask you when your number is up there, and perhaps we're going to have a range of numbers, but you can go outside and you can watch it if you want to. If you don't, you can stay close. Just make sure you go outside a little bit quiet because we're going to have a panel discussion here, and we're only going to show the numbers on the screen, so we're not going to call on you. If your number comes and you missed it, then inshallah we're going to be flexible. So don't worry about it. And hopefully you like it, and then after that, I'm sure the Everstar team wants your feedback. So let us know through email or through whatever means you prefer, so that we can get more feedback to them. So we're going to start the panel discussion with stuff like this.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, I'm just gonna just put it in the middle. Together. We're gonna be switching.
I've got 2.
Alright. Oh, you got 2? Oh, okay.
So we're going to start. Whoever sees.
Yeah, so number
So basically, whatever numbers here, your numbers is lower than the number on the presentation, you should let it go outside so you can have it there, inshallah. For Aisha, we can have 30 minutes.
I don't need a number. I'm gonna stay here.
Alright, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah. So this is a beautiful project, as you can see. I was one of the people who got to test the goggles before Maghrib, and I can tell you this is my second time seeing the Sira program on VR. I saw another one about 2 years ago, and I would definitely say that this is, a notch up. Alhamdulillah, it's something very impressive, and one of the things that I think is very unique in this program that was mentioned is that the less famous and less well-known events from the Sirah, the Prophet ﷺ, are going to be highlighted. So that's one of the unique things, mashallah, a very impressive program, and also making gamifying it. So rebuilding the Kaaba, and I don't know if we're going to get into you get into part of the fight of wanting to put the black stone back, and you dip your hand in the blood to get into an argument. But whatever that game is, it's really cool because we have a massive challenge when it comes to conveying the message of Islam, particularly to the younger generation who are so used to being stimulated and sometimes being overstimulated in content that has nothing to do with Islam, or is oftentimes anti-Islamic. So I was just having a conversation this morning with Dr. Haifa about, said, are you a proponent of this technology? Because I'm a big proponent of technology being used responsibly and in the right way. And she said, yes, I'm glad you used the word responsibly. So using technology to promote the message of Islam is something really, really important. So alhamdulillah, I don't want to take too much time from the discussion, but this is a beautiful project, and you said this is a non-profit foundation as well, right? This is a non-for-profit organization, mashallah. So the goal is not just to make a profit either, which would have been fine if it was, but it's very clear that their goal is to promote the message and promote the teachings of Islam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah and bless this project. We want to open it up to questions anyone has for the team about the project or about what's going to be happening. Anyone who would like to start us off? I'm going to start with, yes, bismillah.
Do you have plans to put this on other platforms like YouTube and those kind of stuff?
You just repeat the question. You can answer.
Are there any plans to put this on other platforms such as YouTube?
Like easily available.
I think there will be. They're also discussing with a lot of people involved in education with schools and using this as a pedagogical tool. But exactly what shape it will take on, I'm not exactly sure. I'm more involved with the conference that's happening, but I was asked to come and a lot of the students that are doing this are literally university students, and they're doing this as a somewhat semi-volunteer status. But inshallah, the feedback that we had a chance to show it to Sheikh Haifa as well. I think she had very good critical feedback to give out, but she had to rush when I was there in Dallas, so we didn't hear from her. This is still at the stage of getting feedback and building from there. We can take questions, but we can also go. We had a few words we wanted to have in mind to share, just to say that this is part of a bigger question of what role the seerah plays in our lives, and maybe just in a very summary, so we can leave more time for Q&A. We had put on the flyer that we'll discuss the role of education and Dar al-Arqam. Like Sheikh Mustafa said, a lot of things that happen in the Meccan period doesn't get focused on as much. Maybe there's not much information in our seerah books, but they're very significant. The Prophet established this institute for the first 6 years of Islam's history, and the companions, men, women, young people, slaves, would gather in this house. This was still at a time where the call to Islam was you may call it private. Just like Nuh alayhi salam called to Islam publicly and privately and very vocally and softly. This stage was also a private call. But sometimes we're all aware of this Dar al-Arqam, who was this 17, 18-year-old boy whose father was involved in the Hilf al-Fudul incident. But he had just married, and his father had gifted him this house. And it was a large house, and it was right across the Kaaba, actually. And the companions would gather there and learn some of the most basic but most fundamental principles of Islam. As we know, Mother Aisha radiallahu anha says that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had told us to do this and not do that first, we would not have been able to carry out this religion. But the belief in the Tawheed was ingrained in our hearts. I'm paraphrasing. And in the hereafter. And then when the verses came, whether it was to stop alcohol, to do this, or all these other injunctions that came in Medina, we performed them. But in the Meccan period, some of the most important ethical, akhlaqi principles were taught, theological principles. Sometimes people think that Dar al-Arqam, they were just meeting because they were weak and they had no other choice. But of the 45 names that we can look at when we see Dar al-Arqam, we find that 12 of them are young people and slaves. A great large number of them are actually quite capable people in society. We have narrations from Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu and others that have said they sought permission from our Prophet to finish off the causes of humiliation, particularly take care of those that were persecuting the Muslims in Mecca. But the Prophet did not allow it. So it wasn't that they were just in a state of absolute weakness, but perhaps there was a more strategic emphasis there that Islam can sometimes grow better, and it needed to reach the hearts of people before full aggression is taken out forth. We can read more into it, and a lot of the people that came out of this institute, this educational institute, like Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, it's as if he would have had a PhD in international diplomacy. The way when he went to Abyssinia and called to Islam, you could write a thesis on how to use the psychology of the people you speak to. He was well trained in Islam and in the akhlaq. And it's also very relevant to our times, and there's a big debate of how relevant seerah is. One is epistemologically how strong the proofs are, but for the bulk of Islamic history, we've lived in times where Muslims and scholars have been living as elites and in Muslim societies. But we find ourselves as Muslims today in the West living as minorities. Sometimes, whether it's Islam or the truths that Islam stands for, being not respected and denied or even aggressively fought. So the Sahaba Meccan life is actually very important, and it can speak to us in ways that perhaps we may not have realized till now. So if we can use whatever technology we have to rip through the curtains of these 1400 years, we can increase from that ilm al-yaqeen, that certainty of knowledge, to a level of certainty of seeing, ayn al-yaqeen perhaps, although there's an element of artistic, poetic license or creative license in these videos, and then inshallah reach to even higher states of haqq al-yaqeen, feel those realities, but see the context, see what these incidents, see the strategy that the Prophet ﷺ is applying with the companions, and apply it in our lives. And it's just us a reminder, like that verse said, that the companions, the education that they went through these institutes is so important. We're living in very difficult times, and we realize we really need institutes like this masjid. We need scholars. We need educational institutes. We need many Darul Arqams here in the West. And inshallah, we can look for these. Sometimes they might be hidden in plain sight. Or we can turn our own homes into some of these institutes. So I just wanted to mention a few words on that one.
Brothers and sisters, I also want to thank the masjid here for hosting us, welcoming us, and specifically Sheikh Mustafa Omar. We're from Sydney, myself, and I bring the salams of the brothers and sisters from Ananda, Australia, and we're happy to host Sheikh Mustafa Omar and you as well, one day in Sydney. But I am from Isra Academy, so we teach Islamic Studies, Bachelor's of Islamic Studies, Masters, PhD. So I guess speaking of education and building on what Ustad Sadiq has been talking about, Alhamdulillah, we're able to attend the ISNA conference and also have these VR goggles there. And we had people coming in, and one of the female scholars actually sat down and apparently she cried while watching these things. Perhaps one of the biggest shortcomings we could have, brothers and sisters, as a community is our understanding of the seerah, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and how it applies to our day to day. I think these goggles will really allow us to almost collapse the time, the past and the present into one time, where we step in and out of the seerah. Imagine you put your goggles on, all of a sudden you're in the Arqam house, and you meet the companions there, you see what's happening there, and then you fast track to Medina, where the Prophet ﷺ establishes his mosque, Masjid al-Nabawi, where we go and visit today, alhamdulillah. And we see Ashab al-Sufa there, just like Ibn Arqam, where there was an educational institution which the Prophet ﷺ graduated many of the giants of Islam, and thanks to them, this religion has come to us today. They went, all around the world. But then you go into the Prophet's masjid, and you go to the corner of the masjid where there's a bit of a shade, a bit of a raised platform, and the Sahaba are there. Those people who perhaps are poor, who are destitute, who don't have families, homes, they're staying in the mosque, but they are under the tutelage of the Prophet ﷺ. They are studying with him, they are learning from him. The Prophet ﷺ, as he comes into the masjid, they have direct exposure to him. Imagine meeting these people, brothers and sisters, and I'm talking about the likes of Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu. Today we know him as the Sahabi who has narrated the most hadith, while he only spent about 3 to 4 years with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So he becomes a scholar in hadith, and he also becomes a governor. He is later assigned as a governor. So as Ustad Sadiq was talking about, Jafar ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, who is an expert in, or as an orator. So do we have experts and scholars and rulers coming out of the educational institution which we call Ashab al-Sufa in the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We're talking about, brothers and sisters, the Sahaba like Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, whose knowledge has filtered down to scholars like Imam Abu Hanifa, who has been the founder of the Hanafi madhab, radiallahu anhu. And whenever we open up tafsir books, we can't go past the name Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu when we read these sources, right? So he has so much contribution into these sources as well. Who was Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu? He was a shepherd as a young boy, and then he embraces Islam, And the Prophet ﷺ, in his educational institution, which we call the Sufa, raised him into a scholar. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he would faint in the mosque from hunger. He would say that I would lay flat on the ground and put a stone against my stomach out of hunger so that I don't feel the hunger. But then this person again becomes the one who narrates the most hadith and then becomes a governor. So, alhamdulillah, like masjids, as Ustad Sadaq has touched upon, masjids, education institutions, especially for the long-term longevity of our community, we need these institutions. And I think these, inshallah, VR goggles will make that very real for us. And then once again, as Ustad Sadaq touched upon, there's a lot of things that we kind of brush through with the seerah, and I really think institutions like the Sufa, like the Dar al-Qam, these are the places that need another attention from us so that we can really grasp what the Prophet ﷺ was doing, especially for the long term, for the Islam to be conveyed and to be spread throughout the world. So may Allah allow us to continue to establish these institutions and to have scholars like Sheikh Mustafa Omar and many others. MashaAllah, it was great to pray behind a young brother. It was great to listen to a young brother recite Quran to us. So these are very promising things, and we're happy to be very happy to be here tonight, inshallah.
Just give my reflections as well on this project. You know, when I started studying and reading books of the Seerah, you know, I'm somebody who likes to comprehensively understand things. I feel I can get a little bit more academic because I have Ustad Sadaf here, Dr. Sadaf here. When you first read the Seerah, you read about the life of the Prophet ﷺ, but you are completely divorced from the reality of what history used to be like, what Makkah used to look like, what Medina used to look like. If you grew up in Orange County like I did, for example, we don't really have much knowledge about history. We don't really have an understanding of what type of clothing people used to wear, what the Kaaba used to look like, what kind of houses they used to live in. And when I was reading Seerah, every little snippet that I would come across, like just the idea of the story of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. When the Prophet ﷺ moved to Medina, he was staying in the house of Abu Ayyub. And Abu Ayyub, he had a 2-story house. And the Prophet ﷺ was put, on the top story, and there was an issue about how he was moved to the different story and all that. And every time I came across one snippet of information in the Seerah, it completely changed my understanding of reality. Because I would watch the movie The Message. Some of you, how many of you watched the movie The Message? I've seen it like 50 times. My absolute favorite movie because it's the only movie.
English and Arabic.
English and Arabic. Arabic, by the way, is completely different. It's longer, it's more detailed, it's more authentic, and they took the characters from English and they swapped roles. It's so funny. It's like the guy becomes a different guy. Very interesting. But anyways, I recommend if you know Arabic, watch both versions. Very interesting.
Was it the one that did this month that I see right up today?
No, that's the cartoon version of it. So there's a cartoon version of it as well. I came out. But when I came across this, I remember seeing some of the buildings in the movie The Message. And then when I came across this in the book, that Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, he had a 2-story house. I don't remember any 2-story homes. It completely shifted my perspective of, hey, what was Medina really like? They could actually build a 2-story home. My understanding was a little shack. When I visited India, when I visited Saudi and we're traveling through the desert, I would see like little 1-story shacks. And I assumed that's what the homes used to look like. Every single time I would come across some more data, it would modify my perception of what history used to be like, what kind of clothing they used to wear. When I visited Istanbul and I visited Topkapi Museum, and I was looking at some of the swords, some of the garments that were attributed to being worn by the Sahaba and all that, started to give me a perception of, you know what, this is kind of the style that they look like. When you go to Saudi, if you go to Makkah today, you see everyone wearing the white thobes, all the guys are wearing the white shiny super thobes. It's made of polyester. There was no polyester, okay? That's not the type of stuff that they were wearing. So it's like we're divorced from the reality of what it might have looked like. And the more data and the more information we get, I find it to be very interesting. And then when I visited random museums, I visited a museum one time in London, the London Museum. You come across what a coin used to look like, what a dirham and what a dinar used to look like at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the type of money that they use. You come across a little porcelain, pitcher or something like that, metal pitcher or something. That's how the Prophet ﷺ used to make his wudu. And I used to just get a dopamine rush. Every time I walk into the museum, I see something, Islamic age. Like, that's what life used to be like. Because you read a hadith and you say, okay, Anas ibn Malik used to go and get the wudu water for the Prophet ﷺ. But what kind of pitcher did he use? No idea. And when you see it, it's like, wow, it was something like that. And subhanAllah, it used to, every museum I would visit, I would feel like I'm getting closer and closer to understanding what the life really was like in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what I've seen in this video and others of VR, especially this one, it's done so well. And when the Bilal movie came out, some of you have seen, anyone see the movie Bilal, the animated series? It's like $22 million they put into it. Amazing series. I recommend you watch it. They did an amazing recreation of what the Kaaba used to look like, might have looked like, and how the idols were being worshipped. And it was a very good analysis made by, I think, Straightway Foundation or something like that. Beautiful film. This type of technology is building on top of that. You don't have to go to different countries. You still should. You don't have to go to different countries and travel around and walk through museums like I used to do and be like, that's what the coin is. That's what their kettle used to look like. That's what their fire pot used to look like. I just experienced the VR and it has all of those things pieced together for you. And this is based on actual proper research. It's not just some random, somebody came up with it. This is done and it's a very good recreation of what, life must have been like. And I think, one, it's an amazing experience to see that. Number two, it's extremely educational. And number three, it's also very entertaining. And we need all three of these in our life as Muslims. So I'm so happy to see projects like this taking shape and taking fruit. And, I'm going to be one of the biggest promoters of projects like this. My computer science major roots just automatically just push me towards that. So, Jazakumullah khair.
I think Sheikh Mustafa was saying, when it comes to the seerah, the beauty lies in the detail. Okay, maybe we can take questions and answers. Anyone who've had a chance to see or just general? Yes, we have a question at the back. So the question was, how long did it take to put this together? So they had their first meeting some 9 months before today, and we had just had the launch at the Eastern Convention, so within 9 months. But like Sheikh Mustafa was saying, there was a lot of go and come back, little detailed things like the homes in Medina were double story, and in Mecca there was single story, a lot about the Kaaba, and there's a lot of some recent information has been found through the research project. So within 9 months, it just shows that with a few bit of thing, you can produce a lot. We did a little launch like this at a masjid with Sheikh Walid Basuni in Houston. And we had a lot of brothers and sisters. I didn't realize, excuse my American geography ignorance, that Houston was the center for NASA. So there's a few Muslims who are working in NASA that said, hey, look, we can help out in this. So I know one thing I know about Los Angeles is might have a lot of people in the film industry. So if there's anyone that wants to come and help, we're more than welcome to take as much help as we can, inshallah.
Where is the ISNA convention located? Where is it?
This year is in Dallas, next year it's in Chicago.
So each year it changes.
I think so.
They recently launched a different one, yes. So,
but usually it's in Chicago.
Usually it's in Chicago.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other questions about the project?
It's done a lot online, and many of the volunteers and those who are working on this project are from Canada and the US, someone from South Africa. Yeah. How many what are being used? How many apps? Well, to be honest, that the process video that we showed was a lot of educational for me as well. I don't understand all the different. I don't have a computer science major, so I don't know actually. Great question, wrong person.
I can answer that question.
You can answer.
Yeah, so the thing is, you're talking about Adobe After Effects, yeah. So these are some of the programs that are out there. As you saw in the way that they're being rendered, there's going to be a program like 3D Studio or Lightwave or something that's going to create the core of the characters. And then there's either plugins for the same program, or there's another program that's going to dress them, that's going to move them, that's going to animate them. There's going to be a different sound program. So we're talking about several different apps. I mean, app is a whole term. Several different, like, really these are not like little iPad apps that are coming out. These are like very sophisticated computer programs that are rendering these things. So it's very like high level technology. Alhamdulillah, you can see that they're using cutting edge technology, but it also, with the more advanced technology, it becomes easier to make something of this level compared to something like 20 years ago. You know, I used to do 3D modeling as well. It was very hard 20 years ago. It is much easier, but it's also much more sophisticated, mashallah.
We have a question.
This question?
Completion. The question is, when would it come to completion? I believe they're very close to launching the first episode. Like I said, it's on Hilf al-Fudul. They had another episode where our mother Khadija radiallahu anha's son Abdullah has just passed away, and you see yourself entering her house. That's when the surah Inna Ataynaka al-Kawthar is revealed. And you see that, the conversation, you give ta'ziyah, you give your condolences, and then Zayd ibn Haritha comes in, gives the revelation. So they have other episodes, but we sort of, because of some of the feedback we received from scholars, they were a bit unsure with showing that episode. So they've had other episodes, and I don't know exactly when they'll come to completion, but they will. The first episode on Hilf al-Fudul is, from what I hear, half or close way to completion. With your du'as, inshallah. I think we should have Sheikh Mustafa work on the team. You sound very I found an employee.
So now that no one else has questions, come my questions. So I have a few questions. Number one, what's going to be the total time content of all the videos that are going to be produced? Number two, in terms of how many games are going to be produced, and what will be the approximate duration to complete all of the games that are there? And number three, what are the main reference scholars and sources that are being used to determine the buildings and the backgrounds, and kind of like where the totem poles were around the Kaaba and all of that? You can answer those.
Three tough questions. The first two are easy to answer. I don't know. In terms of the total time, there's just so many ideas, and after this launch, we've received a lot of feedback. There's more pressure now after the launch than before, so I'm not exactly sure. But the team are always filled with ideas, and we're constantly speaking with scholars and particular episodes that you think are relevant today. People like the suggestion of Hilf al-Fudul and maybe other ones that can be suggested. With the game, I'm also not sure. Unfortunately, I must admit, I saw that and I said it looks interesting, but obviously they have to create ways to make it a bit more addictive and interesting than just simply building the Kaaba. I don't know the answer. But the third one, what are the sources? So a lot of the sources they're using is from this research data that's coming out. And it's just a reminder for brothers and sisters that you don't have to be an expert in Islamic studies to be involved in such a project like this. You can have whatever field you're on, you can somehow contribute to the field of seerah, and this is one example of that. So they are using a lot of the data. For example, I never knew that there's a narration that says that Abraha and his army, when they try to build that temple to defeat the Kaaba or replace it, there was a narration. Now, I don't know the authenticity, so the whole authenticity of this and whether you apply a sanad and matan criticism is a separate debate for scholars to have, but there's a narration that a ship carrying a lot of the materials coming from Rome was going towards that. However, it got stuck in Jeddah, and it happened to be that the same material were used for the rebuilding of the Kaaba. And so sometimes based on the amount of material that was in that ship, they can take a guess on the size of the building. But also I just want to remind everyone that I believe, I'm sure there's an element of poetic license and creative license. So yeah, we have to keep that in mind too.
One more question. One more question is, see, you guys should have asked more, otherwise I'm gonna ask the tougher ones. No, the question is, so are these videos gonna be available for anyone who has a Meta headset to download for free, or are you gonna be selling the games, or are you gonna be selling the videos, or how is that gonna work, and how can people get it if they have their own headset at home already?
Again, I don't know exactly how, but I was speaking to one of the main people who are involved in this, and they were thinking of having some sort of an application, and they could have a subscription, because there's a lot of costs involved in this project. It's not just the volunteer time of those making it, just buying these programs and the software and their hardware. So perhaps like a subscription type thing, they were telling me, but there's nothing set in stone. Yeah, it's just been 9 months, and we were just trying to start something at ISNA, but the moment we said, okay, ISNA's happening, that sort of forced everyone to get everything ready for a launch, and even some of these videos, it's still a bit draft form, so correct questions, but just don't know the answers.
All right. We're gonna have to break for a shot, inshallah.
Beautiful.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan everyone for joining us. Amr, you want to conclude with the...
And if anyone missed out, like, we can stay back a bit.
Yes, I know we only reached number 55 because he's set up, and so anybody that has a number, inshallah, you can come right after Isha, or you might want to listen to a couple, inshallah, then come. It's up to you. So this after Isha, inshallah, we're going to continue the showing. So if you have a number after Isha, please go over there. We still have the 4 lines set up, and we're going to announce for those that don't have numbers, they will stand, inshallah, behind you if they want to continue to watch. So we're going to continue after Isha for around half an hour or so in the 4 lines. They promise me that we're going to try as best as we can to have everybody that wants to watch. Inshallah.
We can come at Fajr too.
Knowing that they are going under the time zone of Australia, so we can benefit from that, inshallah. For them, I think it's still noon. So, yeah, Jazakumullah khair. May Allah accept from them, and we're very honored and blessed to have you guys with us today. And mashallah, most of you that have watched